This is going to be rough, so let's be friends at the beginning and friends at the end, and we'll get through this.
Uh-huh.
Because I think we have very different opinions on this.
I'll be nice.
Okay. He'll be nice. His name is Mike Thomas. Welcome to the real world, everyone. I just got us started off a conversation me and Mike were having off air. I've broken the formula completely. My name is Matt Waters. I am one of your two hosts of the Real World Podcast. We are still trying to kill time until Legion finishes so we can talk about it, and then we'll do Firefly.
Technically, Legion finished last night, but I'm 3 episodes behind, so that wouldn't have worked anyway.
Okay, well, I think it's airing on TV here, now, so I'm not going to see it till the weekend. So, anyway, that was his voice you heard, his dulcet tones all the way from New Jersey, via the magic of the internet. Mike Thomas, how are you this fine Thursday?
I'm fucking exhausted.
Yeah?
Tired.
Yeah, what, kicking your ass?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Just on a vacation.
Yeah. Well, here's a vacation from watching the same thing for 15 weeks like we did with Batman, or we're going to be doing with Firefly soon. And the vacation comes in the form of Watchmen. Merry Christmas. You get to talk about Watchmen with me for an hour. Maybe less, who knows. So, we kind of can't not talk about Watchmen, because we've established our niche here is kind of comic book movies, geek culture, whatever. And, we've talked about... in a roundabout way, we've talked about all the Marvel films. We've talked about all the X-Men films. We've talked about all the Batman films.
Somewhat oddly enough, we basically have avoided talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe almost entirely at this point.
Yeah, but we've, been brought up here and there, enough. We've given it some vague talking point. And,
we've acknowledged its existence. We've given it a few shout-outs.
Yeah, you made me argue why X-Men 2 was better or worse than, and then in that discussion, a lot of it came up. But, we sort of paid lip service to a large amount of the existing comic book movies. And there is one that is... there's loads of, smaller ones out there that could be discussed. But there is a quite large, quite controversial, quite famous one waiting to be discussed, and that is Watchmen, and there's no real two ways around it. Because you say Watchmen out loud, and I feel people get a very strong reaction, and that in itself I always think is interesting, because of how many films just come and go, and then the ones that people sort of hold a particular either contempt or love or feel the need to talk about at great length about. I think that's quite interesting personally. I don't even know how to tackle this thing. It's obviously the most celebrated graphic novel of all time. It's the book everyone allegedly must own and read forever. Had you read it before you saw the film?
Yes. I didn't know much about Watchmen.
Yeah.
It was recommended by a friend in college, so I read it one day on the bus journey to college one day, and it was pretty compelling stuff. It felt like something I hadn't experienced before. I think it was the first comic I ever read, at least as an adult. And I don't think I got a ton out of the comic at the time. I think I definitely was just skipping through the Black Freighter stuff. It just felt like, what am I there's no way this is going to pay off in any significant way, and I kind of just remember skipping through it.
But it does.
Sure it does.
It does.
Yeah. It was a really interesting experience that I enjoyed, but not something that stuck with me as this incredibly powerful literary experience or anything like that.
Wow. Okay. The audience is offended and curse your name. What else is new? So personally, I had never heard of Watchmen in any capacity until I saw a trailer for the film, and it was a trailer that... It wasn't even a trailer or anything, it was a big teaser where it was just cogs inside of a clock or a watch, whatever, and it was saying, the most celebrated graphic novel of all time. I was like, I've never fucking heard of this, how can it be that celebrated? But apparently I was just tiny and ignorant. So when it came along, it was a completely blank slate for me, and I think that informs a lot of my opinion about the film. And I think people who had read it before and then saw it that informs their opinion about the film. And, you know, a lot of people adore that book, hold it up as, you know, the champion of the entire medium. Like, you know, if one had to defend comics as art, they would go to Watchmen or whatever. So that, I think, very much colours your opinion on a Watchmen film, regardless of its quality. And you are a weird enigma in that you had read it and thought, So...
just more like...
It's good, but it's not the greatest thing to ever be written.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair.
And I also should clarify, the only time before the last 24 hours I saw the movie, I saw it on a really tiny airplane screen where they blurred out Mr. Manhattan's dick the entire time. So really, it was not the true.
Not giving the people
experience.
what they want.
Yeah.
3 Manhattan dicks next to each other.
We want blue Billy Crudup dick, and I did not get it.
Wow.
So it's possible that my overall experience of the film was impacted by the context in which I viewed it originally at the time.
That's true.
But
hold up, are you saying you've seen Watchmen twice and once was for this podcast?
Yes.
And the other time was on a plane?
Yes.
And you've just been walking around and that's been the truth until... Wow, okay. I'm not sure how valid your opinions have been until the last 24 hours, personally.
Yeah. Matt, I think you're the only one who actually likes this movie. I don't think there's anybody else.
I might be. It's a really weird phenomenon. This genuinely fascinates me because I don't understand why people hate it so much. And I've attempted to solve this for myself and come up with minimal answers. Some part of me thinks it's I don't know, because this wouldn't make sense, because there's no reason this would be the case, but the people I know that like it are almost exclusively British, and the people that hate it are almost exclusively American. There's no real reason that would be the case, but hey. But yeah, I like it. I will always like it. Even because, as I said, I'd never heard of it, so the entire concept was new for me. So I thought maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's that, like, you know, it's butchering the original material, and I'm getting a really watered down version, but you know, the original is so good that even this watered-down version resonates in my brain as good. But it turns out that's not the case, because I've read it since, and while I will acknowledge it is a better book than it is a film, it doesn't take away my reaction to the film and what I like about the film.
Yeah. I think, actually, it's the rare case where it's not, they're butchering the original vision of this. It's more like... Where's the fucking adaptation part of this? Like, it's like they just stuck the book into freetranslation.com and said, turn this from book to a movie, and then just spit it back out. There was no sense of, oh, wow, we have to tell a story that works on a cinematic level here. Visually, they accomplished it, so it has all the appearances of a movie, obviously, and there's clearly a ridiculous amount of care for detail. But I don't know. The movie feels hollow. It just feels a little bit hollow to me. It's lacking some soul, I would say, would be the best, most accurate way I could put it.
Well, it moves between several characters and doesn't really settle on... Okay, let's dial it way back. So if you're like the one person that doesn't know what Watchmen is, Alan Moore wrote it in 1985, I think, without looking at anything. And it's basically a massive critique on superhero comics and like 50 years worth of them. And it tells the story of this eclectic cast of retired superheroes, forcibly retired by the government. It's something that we've talked about before when we talked about The New Frontier, The Incredibles, which has probably been seen by more people than Watchmen, does a similar thing. Civil War does it, etc., etc. And it's just the retired hero, the comedian, is murdered at the beginning, and it's kind of a murder mystery who did it, and then it evolves into a whole thing with a giant squid / a series of bombs and the Cold War and blah blah blah. It's literally the worst explanation of what Watchmen's about of all time. But hey, and the reason I did this was because, like, the characters that we have to go with, one of them is like completely detached from humanity because he's become a god, so it's quite hard to feel any soul from him. And like in the book, it's one thing, like he's this blue dude, Dr. Manhattan, who, you know, he has infinite powers and he the way he talks is a bit different, but actually hearing the voice they assign to him, that Billy Crudup goes with, this sort of completely unfeeling, quiet, gentle voice, it is very hard to like feel any emotion there, and like, that's on purpose because that's what the character's doing. But you know, your other characters, you've got Rorschach, who's just this narrating, brooding, violent, what Batman has become, essentially. You know, I'm just saying that I think maybe it feels a bit soulless because the characters that we have to look at are so extreme and not all that normal. I don't know.
And I think also, we're kind of jumping the gun here a little bit,
yeah.
But I think maybe if there was soul to be found in this story, it's found in Night Owl and Silver Jupiter, whatever.
Silk Spectre.
There we go. And Jupiter's involved somewhere in that.
Yeah. Her mum went by some Sally Jupiter, I think, to censor their Polish name.
And those two by far give the worst performances of the main characters. And I think they were supposed to be the most human of them all, and by intention, and just by the way the story was told. And I found their performances so lifeless at times that I could not even really.
I think he's okay.
Get invested in them. He seems better after she joins the fray.
Yeah.
I was live messaging you. I was watching. I was like, wow, Patrick Wilson is having a rough time with this one.
Yeah, and because I when I saw Fargo series 2, I was like, holy shit, why isn't Patrick Wilson currently getting all the offers in the world?
I was just like, wow, Patrick Wilson, maybe he's not that good. Oh my God, Malin Akerman is so much worse than this. She's so much worse. She's so much worse.
Yeah.
It's a really they just don't mesh well with what's going on here. The other characters are so ridiculous and hateful and unlikable. And I think also for me, it's like, I think if you really, really empathize with the comedian, Rorschach, or Dr. Manhattan, one, there's something terribly wrong with you. Go seek therapy right away. Two,
Batman's cool because he punches people, man.
Yeah. Two, I think you are more likely to enjoy this film. I think if you think that there's something truly special by what is going on with those characters. And it's not that I think the acting with those three is very good. Mm-hmm. I just kind of think as characters they're just complete and utter fucking scumbags, or so philosophically, I don't know what's the right word. But not fake, but so much like Dr. Manhattan. Like, so there's, we're jumping all over the place. But Dr. Manhattan has this big moment of revelation, and it's played as like this huge, likely profound moment. And it's that Silver Spectre, you were the creation of a completely irrational contradiction of a woman getting raped, later consenting to having sex with the same person, and then giving birth to you. And I was like
turning air into gold.
Like, no. This is not some big profound moment. This is bullshit. And
it's not profound for him. He's like going on a journey through her.
I know, but I think like the movie took that like way too seriously for me. I was just like, God, like these characters are just dumb. And so it's not that if those other two characters worked, if Night Owl, Silver Spectre like worked, I could kind of just enjoy Rorschach and the comedian and Manhattan for what they were, more so, instead of like, this is all I have to cling on to, and it's not much.
Okay. I agree. They are borderline impossible to sort of go with emotionally or empathize with, but I feel dumb even asking this. Do you need that every time to enjoy a film? Do you need to like bond with a character? No,
but I think this movie is held back by the two big performances failing massively.
Oh, it would be a better film if what you were saying. I'm not saying that like it's invalid, but.
So, like, what I was thinking of was, like, with Batman v Superman, like, I am clawing deep to find things to be remotely positive with that movie. That's not my experience with this film. It's like, I'm like, oh, wow, like, Jackie Earle Haley really kind of just, like, brings a real level of vulnerability to this character Rorschach, which you could just tell would be, in lesser hands, would not seem vulnerable at all. Dr. Manhattan somehow manages to bring humanity to... Billy Crudup somehow managed to bring humanity to Dr. Manhattan. Jeffrey Dean Morgan is a charismatic machine and is a comedian. Like, these are all positive things, and these are all big parts of the movie, so it's easy to enjoy for that. I just think kind of the movie doesn't hold together quite as much because the heart of the movie is missing or executed poorly.
Sure.
It's not like they tried to have that heart in the movie. It's not like this was like, we're just making a super cold movie. It's like, I feel like I'm judging it based on what it attempted to do and not what it not attempted to do, for instance.
Well, yeah. Well, this is the thing. Zack Snyder directed this film. I didn't really know who he was. I'd seen 300, and I actually liked 300. But he wasn't... Like, you say Zack Snyder now, I'm like, ugh, Zack Snyder. That hadn't really taken effect for me at this point. And now that I look back at this film, knowing the kind of films he relentlessly makes, and also seeing the trend superhero films have gone down, etc., I look at it, I'm like, this all makes a lot of sense, because he's just made this big, sexy, dark, hyper-violent, not at all subtle thing. So I very harsh thing to say, but I think the failings come in who made it. But
yeah, but I mean, like, those failings still exist.
Yeah, they do. But I think, like, okay, so the common criticism from the people who adore the book is, the film sort of throws in all of its sort of pastiching and clever metaphors and all of that in favour of kind of what the comic was criticising, and just focusing so, like, the violence is so, like, it's violence porn at times, like, when Night Owl and Silk Spectre are fighting those guys in the alleyway, like, that is a scene that's in the book, but it's like, let's throw in some, like, bones popping out of arms and shit. It's like,
yeah.
And, like, the rape scene is far more extreme than in the book. Just all of it. It's incredibly sort of fetishized. And, there's this extended fight scene with Night Owl and Rorschach breaking out of the prison, and it's just like, I mean, it's a cool fight, but that was so much the focus of this. Like, they did stuff that I like, which I'll talk about in a minute, but then also it seems like the second tenet in this film was, let's make a cool fucking, like, dudes fighting film, and that isn't what Watchmen the book is about at all. And I think that's the big criticism. And then when you look at who made this film, it makes a lot of sense, because Zack Snyder loves this shit. Like, he likes it to all look really cool, and, like, there are a ton of really good shots in this film, but like, that opening montage set to Bob Dylan is I think fucking awesome. But
so what is Watchmen about, Matt? Why do people care about it?
So we said we'd read it on the last episode. We said we would both read it before this one. We lied, not on purpose though. We would never lie to you. Just, life happens. So instead, I've outsourced our research to a friend of the show, Ben, who powered through being incredibly high in Amsterdam to try and explain to me why exactly it is such a glorious thing that doesn't translate to the film, as it were. And, I mean, I've kind of summed it up already, so you going to me for the segue is a little awkward now. But in his words, it's Alan Moore criticising 40 to 50 years worth of the medium, and everything about the book is thought to be a comic book. Like, it's written as a book about books. The film isn't about books, and it's not about films, because superhero films, as we know them, weren't really a thing at that point. Like, all there had really been were some Spider-Man films, some Batman films, some Superman films, and a couple of X-Men films. So it's not really taking a pop at them, and it's not taking a pop at comic books. It's just sort of lifting the vague concepts and characters and presenting it as a more straightforward piece, when Watchmen is very much meant to be poking fun, well, not poking fun, but just sort of asking questions about the comic book medium as a whole. And, like, a huge amount of it is based on structure and mirroring and blah blah blah. I know how bored you are even listening to this, Mike, but my thing has always been with this, because the first, like, your criticisms are all valid, but the first thing I always hear when people say they don't like Watchmen is it all just relates back to the book. And I always just go, okay, but does that invalidate the film as a thing that exists in a vacuum. Like, does not being as good as the book mean it is bad? And I'd say it. I say no. I say it's still, the things that are good about it are still good about it, and that's why I still like it. The things you're saying, I respect those criticisms, and I will listen to those. But while I tremendously respect the book and what it does artistically and acknowledge it is a superior artistic project, I don't think that means that the film is by default bad. If you want a really good sort of passionate look at the book, go to YouTube and type Kieran Gillen Watchmen. He's very jittery in it, but he just, for like 35 minutes, just breaks down why Watchmen is fucking amazing. It's very, very interesting, because that dude knows a lot about comic books, so hearing a writer talk about a project that was good is compelling. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's obviously awesome that is what the book is doing, that it's taking this sort of metatextual look at things. But I don't think that not doing that makes Watchmen bad as a film, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I don't... My issue when I say it feels like too much of a poorly translated and adapted movie, it's not that it's bad that movie exists, it's that the movie itself doesn't really feel whole or as interesting, and then it just feels hollow. And that, to me, is an impact of a poor attempted adaptation. That hollow feeling is there regardless of whether or not there's a book behind it. I mean, I think a good example is... I haven't seen what was that, Jupiter Ascending movie, but like basically everyone said, or like a common criticism was, it feels like a movie that was adapted from a book and they had too much to adapt and didn't know how to do it. It's like, that's my reaction to that similar. It's like, regardless of whether or not there was a book or not, this movie feels like they had so much, and instead of adapting it well, they actually just stuffed it all in there and just kept everything. The notion that there is an extended cut is kind of blows my mind. I mean, it's 2 hours and 45 minutes.
It is.
And, nothing jumps out of you as being missing. I mean, besides the Black Freighter stuff, obviously. But
which is great.
Yeah.
Great big sexy metaphor for everyone. So let's... I feel this has been a very jumping around episode. Let's talk about some stuff I like about this, because I feel... You're as perplexed by me liking it as I am by you not liking it, almost. So the thing that... Because, again, it was a completely fresh concept to me when I saw it. The thing that has always stuck with me about it is that it is set in, like, alternate history. Like, it uses a lot of lookalikes of historical figures and real-world events and music from the time. It felt... To me, the idea of a fantastical superhero story set in a world that put so much emphasis on making it feel quote unquote grounded was incredibly interesting to me, and I loved that it was stylized in that way, with all the like, Hello Darkness My Old Friend and 99 Red Balloons, and like, it's just something about that for me that I really like, and it's what I like about The New Frontier, which we covered, that takes real events and it uses the JFK speech and everything. And it uses that to underpin its story, and it makes it feel different and real. Like, when so many comic book movies are so wacky, and like, it's so clear that they could never be in our world or whatever, or they don't even bother to think about the wider world. It's all just what's happening in Gotham, as if Gotham is just an island devoid from the rest of the world. So I found that incredibly interesting when I first saw it, and I'm now aware there are more things that do that, but when I first saw it, I hadn't seen that before, so it will always, like, I can't take that aspect away for me, in that it was the first thing I saw that did that. Yeah.
I have nothing to add.
You have nothing to add? Does that do nothing for you?
No.
You don't like that stuff? Okay.
No, I mean, like, it was good.
It's just, when I saw it, I thought, this is different, Like,
it's different.
I've seen Spider-Man, I've seen Superman, I've seen Batman, I've seen X-Men. I hadn't seen this, and...
This is different. It still stands out as different. I actually do think it's surprisingly watchable, despite its length.
Yeah.
Despite its dour nature, despite its color palette, which are probably things that we should keep in mind when criticizing the 2 hour and 45 minute Batman vs Superman movie and the upcoming 3 hour Justice League movie. Where,
is it 3 hours? Is that what's got now?
That's the rumor.
Joss Whedon's going to direct a Batgirl film, though, apparently.
Thank fucking God. That better be... like, God. Anyway.
Yeah.
I find Watchmen watchable. There's something easy about it. I think
because it moves between characters, and
yes,
it changes up what you're looking at quite a lot. Like, it's not like they're just moving between these 3 locations. Like, you get flashbacks, and you get origin stories and memories and all sorts of stuff.
And I think in a case of the source material really, and being so loyal to the source material helping, is that the story is so ridiculous that closely adapting it kind of undermines a lot of Zack Snyder's worst instincts, which is to take things hyper seriously.
Yes.
I'm not sure if Zack Snyder intended for this movie to feel light and breezy and easy to watch. In fact, I think far from it, if I had to guess. But, like, it's so fucking ridiculous all the time that there's no way to be, like, overwhelmed by the dour nature of it all. And it's... I mean, I think, like, Rorschach and Ozymandias, there we go. I'll get that right. Breaking Bad are both such hilarious deconstructions of Bruce Wayne and Batman.
Yeah.
That
everyone in it is supposed to be a parody of someone. Like, Night Owl is like Blue Beetle and Batman. Rorschach is kind of Batman. Dr. Manhattan's basically Superman.
Yeah.
Another superpower.
And I to me, the way I took it was like Ozymandias is basically like the worst Bruce Wayne could become.
Yeah,
Rorschach is like the worst Batman could become.
Sure.
And Night Owl was like this wimpy white bread version in the middle that is useless and boring as a result.
Night Owl is like gadget Batman, like Adam West Batman.
Yeah.
And then Rorschach is like hyper-violent, broody detective Batman. And then
who's just like a fucking asshole and bigoted.
He's a fascist,
to everyone. Like, yeah, this is like...
That's his entire arc, that he can live if he wants to, but he's like, no, kill me. Like, because I refuse to go along with this. I will be who I am.
Yeah, and I did find that aspect of it somewhat interesting. Like Rorschach is so over the top in his
shitty human being. Batman. Shitty human being. Just the way he talks down about like
everyone. Everyone. There's not
calling Laurie's mum a fat bloating whore dying and then you see her. It's like, I mean, she's got a drinking problem clearly, but I think you're going a bit far. Yeah, he's an asshole.
Yeah, so he's an asshole.
But you can see how like teenagers would see that character and be like, oh, he's cool.
I know, and if anything, like that's what was like kind of weird to me about this movie, I guess, is that you just watch it, you're just like, wow, there's some people who clearly just watch and think Rorschach's fucking great. I'm just like,
I mean, he is the visually coolest. Like the mask.
He is the visually coolest.
Yeah.
It's the best performance. It's at least the best performance from a character who's really in it from beginning to end. Yeah, I could see people preferring Jeffrey D. Morgan.
Yeah, I love that he didn't want to do it because he dies in the first scene, and then he I was like, no, dude, you're like the most important character.
Finish the script. So, like, it's well executed based on the design of the character, but that I think also when you position the movie, like, there needed to be a way at the end where they were like, by accident, they were all the villains somehow. Like, you know what I was like? There needed not to be. They didn't need to not end up in this dynamic where Rorschach is trying to save the day, or there's a perceived nobility in his final action. Like, there's like somehow you had to take his like ethos and just turn it into like he actually is a monster. But that's not going to rewrite it, or not going to attempt to rewrite it or anything like that. I appreciate Ozymandias kind of being, like I said, like on the other end of the spectrum. This is like Bruce Wayne with a god complex and using the Bruce Wayne's powers of wealth and social standing to basically be a fascist in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And so you got the excesses of like the two dynamics in Bruce Wayne. I think that's kind of interesting.
I do too.
At least with that, they take it all the way. It's like, yeah, like Bruce Wayne's kind of an asshole, and if no one kept him in check, this is a logical conclusion of where asshole Bruce Wayne would end up with.
And we left Batman behind weeks ago, and we're still fucking talking about Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. We're stuck.
We're stuck forever
talking about that. So like I said, like, there are interesting things going on here.
Ozymandias is like the most changed character because
I think your memory of the book is far better than mine, so you're gonna have to carry us on.
Well, I skimmed it while watching it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so for one thing, like, he's dressed more colourfully in the book, and I've heard that his costume in the film is supposed to be making fun of the sort of bat nipples era of the Batman films, which is fair play if that's what you're doing. If you're parodying that, I respect you. But while, like, his goal is the same and you're using a lot of the same words, the way he reacts to what he's doing is very different. In the film, he comes across as sort of sociopathic, or like, he's so cold. His intelligence has made him cold like, he's just saying it all very matter-of-factly, and like, he's like, yes, this is what must happen, blah, 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 blah. No feeling whatsoever. In the book, he's far more tortured about everything he's doing, and he cries as the plan is happening. And then when the word starts to come through that there's been a ceasefire between America and Russia, well, not a ceasefire, but, a truce, he sort of declares, like, passionately, I did it, kind of thing. And like, he's ecstatic about it. And it's more of a story of I care too much rather than I am so intelligent, I am incapable of... like, he's quite robotic in the film, is my take on the character, that he's sort of this Uberman who is above us all in his intelligence. Which
is funny, because I don't think of that as being Matthew Good's strength as an actor. Like, I think Matthew Good is a natural charmer, a guy who you would be annoyed by how much you would like him, despite the fact that he's probably mostly a dick, probably a rich dick. So he's actually kind of like, seemed like a great choice at first, but whether it was the writing, the direction, the actor's instincts, like, I kind of went off into this blah realm of boring and like, just kind of a missed opportunity.
When he reads the line, because this is another thing I liked about it, I hadn't... This part of this just may be on my filmic ignorance, but when he says, "Oh, I did it 35 minutes ago," I was like, "That's fucking cool." But then, that line when he says, "I'm not some
comic book villain,"
and it's like, "Yeah, you are, dude. Like, the way you're playing this, you are."
It's like, one, like, I mean, God, what was it? Screen Crush just did a great articles, like, lines we'd never want to hear in movies again, and one of them was from Logan, which is, "This isn't some movie, this is real life." It's like, stop, don't take us out of what we're watching. You are a comic book villain. You are in a movie. Please stop doing that.
But even if they were the first to do it, like, you're fully doing it right now when you're saying that. And like, the ending generally, right? So that's the other thing. They completely changed the ending, and I've never, ever understood why this pisses people off that they changed it. Like, of all the changes you're going to make, this is the one I'm like, well, obviously you changed this. So in the book, Ozymandias and his team of scientists genetically engineer a giant telepathic squid monster that murders like 3 million people or something. And then everyone in the world thinks it's like an alien invasion, and humanity unites against the alien, and that's how it ends. In the film, Ozymandias has been working with Dr. Manhattan for a while on some sort of energy project, but what he hasn't told him is he's basically harnessing his power to create these explosions that seem like they've been made by Dr. Manhattan, like they look like them, they have the same effect, blah, blah, blah. So the world thinks Dr. Manhattan has essentially nuked, I think, like 50 cities. I literally just watched that, I don't remember. But, he launches these explosions all over the globe, and then everyone stands down and unites together because it's very clear, Dr. Manhattan is above us all, blah, blah, blah. So it's a similar idea. Everyone has to unite against some crazy supernatural threat. And, I don't know why people would want the giant squid. Like, I have all the things to get, like, bent out of shape about.
Yeah, and I actually really like, when the giant squid happened in the book, I was just like, what?
Yeah.
It's literally a giant squid?
Yeah.
So
that really is the point, that, like, because it is taking this big critique of comic books. I think Ben, the guy who gave me all this research I've butchered, and he's probably pissed off hearing me all say it now, he said the idea was that that the smartest people in the world would make the dumbest thing possible is like exactly what comic books used to do, and it would be this crazy, wacky creature. So that's why it was done. But it's like, of course, you don't do that in the film.
Yeah.
And I think it's good because, you know, in a world where it's asking questions about superheroes and asking questions about accountability and all these things, which are the things that I like the most about it, I think it makes perfect sense that, like, the scariest thing in the world would be one of the superheroes, personally.
Yeah, and I think it was one of the few genuinely tragic moments is when Dr. Manhattan realizes that
he's right.
One, he did this, and two, everyone's going to blame him.
Of course. When him and Laurie get back from Mars, and he's just assessing what's happened.
Yeah, it's that's good stuff, and you know, that was an excellent decision.
I think so. I will stand behind no giant squid forever. Like.
Yeah, the giant squid was not something I particularly.
I mean,
enjoyed about the book.
Yeah,
I can understand why they did it.
Goal. I don't see what the problem is there.
I think it achieved the same goal in a much better and more cinematic way.
Yeah, complain all you want about them making everything more violent and less subtle and whatever. But the fucking squid.
It's such weird.
I've never gotten that ever.
Other things to talk about. This one, I feel like I don't want to be bullying, but Malin Ackerman is really bad in this movie. She has some terrible lines she's got to pull off. I'll say that. I don't know if Meryl Streep could pull off some of these lines, but she's really not up to the challenge in the slightest, unfortunately, and that's unfortunate. That's very, very, very unfortunate. Does any scene with her really work? Really? Was there any moment where you're like, at least that was good?
Well, there's moments
where she plays a prominent role.
There's moments where I'm not like she's, you know, like when Dr. Manhattan's various clones are trying to pleasure her. I think that's a funny scene.
Okay.
And she's not actively ruining it.
Is there any scene where Malin Ackerman is not participating in some sort of sexual activity that works on screen?
All right, that's making it. No, that's. It's just a funny concept. It's not that she's the pretty lady.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not being a child about it. I don't know. She can be really bad, and then other times she's like fine. I don't have such a problem with her that I'm like, ugh, every time she's on screen or anything.
She peaks at fine. I think we can agree with that.
Okay, she peaks at fine. Sure.
Yeah.
Her reward: romantic comedies opposite Vince Vaughn and stuff.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan does a really good job as the comedian. The comedian is
just the worst human.
Yes. And once again, much like Rorschach, I think I went to the Wikipedia page, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan, I think, kind of captures it perfectly when he said what was really tough about this role, or tough to pull off about this role, is that no matter what this guy does, you just kind of like him still. And I'm just like, no.
Do you?
No. And it's one of those characters like, this is a character we need to humanize. And this movie absolutely tries to humanize him, absolutely tries to redeem him in some ways. I'm just like, these are not the people we need to humanize on screen.
Does it try and redeem him?
I think
they absolutely attempt to say, yes, he's a human. Like, look, he cried.
Yes.
But I don't think they try and say he was right all along or anything.
Not right all along, but more like...
I don't even think they go...
Forgive and forget. Forgive and forget, I feel like, is kind of...
I don't know if they do that.
I think the mother, his rape victim, tries to do that. I don't think it's...
and she gets criticized by Laurie for it.
But then again, like, that becomes muddied by the fact with the scene later where Dr. Manhattan's like, from that air came this gold. And it's just like...
Yeah.
It's just weird. It's not saying it's the worst thing I've ever seen on screen. I just think it's a little iffy with what they do there.
Sure. But he's also got some of the coolest lines in the film, and like Jeffrey Dean Morgan is like a fucking machine of charisma, and it is difficult. Like, you maybe shouldn't have cast someone likable in it, but maybe that's the point. Maybe I don't know.
I don't deny that's the point. Yeah. I questioned the desire to make that a point.
Yeah.
That is a weird
because
point
the plot revolves around him in such a weird way. Because it isn't ultimately about him, but he his death and the investigation of his death triggers everything. Like Ozymandias killing him, he did it on purpose to make things go the way they would. You know, they all talk about him. They all keep coming back to him. It's like, oh, he was right all along and blah, blah, blah. So I think to have a character who is, for better or worse, so important to the story, like regardless of if they're a bad person or not, or someone who should be liked, I think it's important to make him memorable.
Yes.
And thus the way they did that was to cast someone charming.
Yeah, yeah, it's a weird situation. Like I said, I think if Night Owl and Silver Spectre were executed better, I would have less of an issue with the only charming people in this movie being Rorschach and the comedian.
I would like to see Patrick Wilson take another stab at that, and I'd like to see someone else as Silver Spectre.
Yeah, you know, Patrick, he was very good in Fargo.
He's very good
in Little Children.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a ton else with him, so I'm like...
Well, that's the weird thing. Like,
I'm not sure if I can really sit here and say, like, man, that guy deserves another go at it.
Well, a lot of the people in this film didn't really go anywhere. Or, you know, they're working. Like, who am I to say they're not going anywhere when I'm just sitting here? But, you know, their careers didn't lift off in the way people in other superhero films did. And I think Patrick Wilson was in some ways lucky to get in Fargo. And fucking knocked it out of the park in that. And after that performance, I'm like, now he should be a star. But yeah, it is weird. Like, just seeing what he is capable of now, or at least in that one role was capable of, I wonder if he could do it better.
I'm not sold, but, you know, he'd probably be better now. I think... So actually, that kind of gets into my next idea. Who would you want to see make this movie? Because is the answer Zack Snyder for you? I can't. Yeah.
No,
because you like the movie and he made it, so that's why I'm.
Well, that's true. Well, the things he's very good at, he's arguably at his best in his career at in this film, like the music video, the mini music videos, and that kind of stuff. The style is dripping all over the fucking place.
Okay, that actually brings up a point that I forgot. The music.
Sure, I like it. You don't. I hear now. I hear in your voice you don't like it. You don't like that Bob Dylan montage at the beginning?
No.
I think that's excellent. That's like, just, if you just took that 5 minutes and put it on YouTube, I think that would be cool, but hey.
Sometimes I was like, it was so over the top and how much hit you on the nail on the head, and then sometimes they're like, oh, that was a genuinely good choice.
It is too long, but...
No, I'm just talking about in general, the music selection. Like, there are times where I'm just like, oh my god, you're actually playing Hallelujah because
that's terrible.
That
scene is terrible. That's the worst scene in the film. But
like, and I just felt like there was it went back and forth between like, oh, that was pretty neat music selection. Then I'm just like,
it's weird.
I'm watching Suicide Squad. I'm watching Suicide Squad. Like,
good soundtrack. Like Suicide Squad. They front load the music a bit. Like, it makes it seem like it's going to be a bigger deal than it is. Like, in the first 45 minutes, you get a lot of songs. And then they sort of go away again until Hallelujah. And
that's true.
So I think it just sticks with it. I think a lot of this is just sort of naive nostalgia on my part, is my feeling on this. That I think back to when I first saw it and I was like, oh, cool, like period pop music in a superhero film. That's neat.
And I was trying to think about, for instance, why I have an issue with the way the music is used like this, like it is here in Suicide Squad, and it's much better here than in Suicide Squad, to be clear. And I was thinking of the one where it was incredibly successful for me, and that was with Guardians of the Galaxy. And I was like, the music was so much tied to who Peter was and his hang-ups and the payoff at the end of what the meaning of it was, and then how it's used to also set up a fresh soundtrack for the second one. I'm just like, this is how you do it.
That's how you soundtrack,
yeah. This is how you make a soundtrack actually carry weight when you're going over the top with what music you're selecting. Like, it's always going to be a little distracting when you're picking very, very, very super poppy music that is like very popular and all that shit to go with your movie. But that's the way that you actually make it mean something, and how it just feels like a part of the movie as opposed to something that's like happening that makes you like, that takes you out of the movie. And I guess a lot of the movie just kind of felt, a lot of the music just felt like it was taking me out of the movie for a second. I don't feel like that was entirely necessary.
I think you have a point when it's like current stuff. Like, it does that in Suicide Squad. I do think you can get away with it more when you're doing it for the purposes of establishing what era this is supposed to be set in. You know, like, I think if you're going to make an 80s film, I think it's a good decision to shove a load of 80s music in it, personally.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, on paper, a lot of the decisions are super cliche. Like, Hello Darkness, My Old Friend at a Funeral. Yeah, that sounds cliche, but it works for me it worked for me the first time I watched it, and maybe that just overrides all my feelings on it since.
How can you hear that music and not immediately think of Arrested Development? I just like.
Well, I like to think about Arrested Development as often as possible. So
I know I don't know. It's.
Look out for our Arrested Development podcast coming in 3 years.
Yes. We will do an episode per episode.
Oh God. I mean, I'll do that, but...
Well, I really think it was problematic when they had Tobias doing this and this and...
Oh, God, it's going to be really hard to talk about Series 4. There's so much going on there. Anyway, Watchmen. It's a weird one. Like, it just is. Like, in my head, it's a huge deal. I was looking up the money, and I was kind of shocked at how comparatively little it made. And it does often feel like it's just vanished, like it's a thing that happened and people may have even forgotten about until they're reminded. And it's just such a weird enigma for me, and always will be, because of how divisive it is, how extremely people feel about it, it's just weird, man. It's a weird entity in this industry.
It is. I feel like it's mostly been forgotten. I don't think it made much of an impact at the time. I think people have mostly just moved on.
Yeah. Not me. Never me. I'm sitting here.
No. That could be a part, is that, it's a one-off. It's not part of something bigger. There's no sequel.
That's true. There's no post-credit sequence.
There's no... It's missing a lot of the hallmarks of comic book movies now. I mean, like, I made a deeper penetration than Hellboy, for instance.
Yeah.
But, I think what we would probably find if we went back and watched a lot of 2000s comic book movies, a lot of them got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, because they weren't taken in any way seriously, and they were considered small time. And I think that's why there's such an aggressive anti-superhero thing now, because they are, whether you like it or not, a huge deal now. So I think some people are like, ugh, go away, give me my films back.
Which is weird, because only 2 to 3 of them come out a year. And
I know, that's slightly blown out of proportion. Like, I'm sick of superhero films. Like, do you know how many films come out every year that you're not watching? Like, shut up. I
mean, there'll be 6 this year, so one every 2 months. I guess that's a problem. I don't know. Like, it's not like it's going to suddenly become like 8 or 10, I don't think. Yeah. But, I mean, I guess it could.
But quite literally, how many, like, decently promoted films come out a year? Like, a lot.
Yeah.
I really don't think it's that huge a problem, but hey. So that was Watchmen. I don't know. I have no concluding thoughts. I don't feel either of us got anywhere in this argument. It will remain an enigma in my mind forever.
No, I think your insight at least led me to think about the movie more. I think we've also come to a place where it's like we don't think the film's a failure in any way.
No. And it is, as you said, super watchable. Like, you can just sit down and watch this. Like, I
was almost disappointed that I rented it instead of bought it on Amazon, so I figured this would make really fun background noise a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is ridiculous to say, but
it is. And also, like, you can criticize it for focusing so much on being cool, but there are a lot of quite cool scenes that are fun to just throw on for a minute and then be like, oh yeah, that scene, and then just stop. But yeah. Strange. Nothing else quite like it, I don't think, in the world of comic book movies. Are we ever going to do, like, Scott Pilgrim and Kick-Ass and weird stuff like that?
I mean, I don't know if I want to rewatch either of those.
I super like Scott Pilgrim, but it hits me right in my sort of cultural touching points. So
we may need to watch it then, just so we can fight about it.
Okay. Well, I'm like a comic book video game nerd, and it, like, is full of that shit, so...
I'm guessing you really liked Ready Player One.
Haven't seen it.
No, it's a book that Spielberg's turning into a movie.
I haven't read it. I sounded dumb just then. Yeah, I will be interested in it, yeah. Alright, well, I guess next. Are you going to have watched the final episodes of Legion by next
Yeah,
week?
I only have 3 to watch. It's kind of weak.
Okay, cool. Well then, we're going to try and do all of Legion in one episode next week. And then are we taking a break and then Firefly, or what?
Nah,
straight into Firefly. Or just no, we're just not even going to do Firefly. Sorry guys, cancelled plans. Podcast over. We're doing Legion instead. This is taking up too much of our time.
Yeah. We have to watch a movie once a week. We have to talk for an hour once a week.
We don't like each other. That's the thing behind all this.
That's the fatal flaw of what we're doing here.
Yeah. So we've made good on that
lack
promise
of common interest
at the beginning, where I said we have to be friends at the beginning, at the end. We've failed to do that. We are bitter enemies at the end of this. So this has been another episode of the Real World Podcast. Soundcloud.com/Mike and Matt. EnterTheRealWorld.com. There's lots of stuff there. I made a threat that I'd review Power Rangers, so I guess I'm going to have to do that, and that may exist by the time you're listening to this, so look for that. Yeah, read all our stuff, listen to all our stuff, and go to Futurama.net, which is another thing I'm doing. That's right, I'm cheating on you, Mike. Surprise.
Fuck you.
Fuck me.
8 days a year, 8 days a